Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates. With your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi, everyone. This is Cindy with another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And today I have Kelly Wierbecki with us. Hi, Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Kelly is, she's a former special ed teacher and an ABA therapist, and she now does, is it spelling to communicate? Is that the method that you use? Yes. Okay. So we've done a series of interviews about spelling to communicate, RPM, etc. And as I've done the interviews, we've talked to an OT and a speech therapist, but I wanted to talk to somebody that has done ABA. There's some reasons why I want to talk about that, and we'll get to it when we get to it. Kelly, so every interview that I do, we always start at the beginning. I like to start in the beginning of your journey, find out a little bit about you. So what made you want to be a special ed teacher in the first place?
It was something that always was in me. I don't know how to explain it because as even a young child, I knew this is what I was going to do. And back in the 70s, when I was in elementary school and the early 80s in high school, we didn't really see a population of special ed people until I got to high school. And there was like one room where everyone was in, and I felt like they were isolated. So I would often encourage them to sit with us, or I would go sit with them at lunch, and had a lot of interaction. I did Special Olympics, and my first job was working in a group home in my town. It was 8 non-speaking men. I loved it. I absolutely loved this job, but I was 16 and they had me like driving them to the main campus in Hartford where they would go each day. And but I just had such a passion for working with this group and can really appreciate them, and so I've always loved it. And I decided, when it was time to go to college, I was going to be a special ed teacher. And I started that in 1988.
Okay, so you went to college, and so you knew what your major was going to be. It was going to be with special ed.
Immediately.
Did you know anything about autism back then?
Nope, not a thing.
No, it was unheard of back then, really.
Yeah, did not hear anything at all. And then I got married I was married very young, and I moved to the town next to where I grew up. So it's a small town, and I got a job right after I finished college. So I was a young teacher, and I was in the same school, in the same classroom for 33 years.
Oh, wow. So they didn't call it ABA back then. They called it behavior modification or something like that, I think. Is that what you used when you were teaching?
No. So when I first started in special ed, it was just, at that time, there was a lot of, everyone had ADHD. That was the thing at the time. So I worked with kids with learning disabilities and ADHD. And I think now I know that our district was probably outplacing a lot of students at the time. And it wasn't until about 20 years ago where our director at the time had said, we need to start an ABA program because we have an influx of students with autism who are 3 coming in, and asked me if I would do that during the summer. So I had no idea what she was talking about, but I said, sure, I'll do it. And they set me up with a behavior specialist, and he kind of trained me. And I was really intrigued by it, by what I saw at the time and what I was learning at the time. And they were 3-year-olds and 1 4-year-old at the time. I was actually torn because I, at the time, was teaching 7th through 12th grade during the school year. And I was so passionate about working with this population and ABA that I wanted to stop doing what I was doing and go to this and work with the little ones. But ultimately, I didn't do that because I looped with my students. So I stayed with them throughout the years once I got them in 7th grade. And I couldn't leave those kids. So every summer I would go back and I would work with that same group of students until eventually they came into 7th grade. And then I got them until they graduated.
How did you learn ABA though? Through that behaviorist that you work with that summer?
That was how I got started. And then I thought it was great. And I I went and got certified. I got another master's degree.
Got it.
And I was all in. I realize now I wasn't ever strict ABA. I found some components of it that I wasn't thrilled with. So I modified it. Through the years,
Okay.
I would modify it.
And you were using it with the older ones, though?
Less and less as they got older, because I took the reward part of that. And because as a teacher, as a special ed teacher, I was always, I had a reward system all the time. So I wasn't about punishing for anything. That's a lot of ABA is, you're giving an M&M or something when someone does something right. And so I took that kind of positive reinforcement piece of it and continued to use that. And there were things I had to do, but as they got older, as the students got older, I wasn't seeing the jumps that I saw when they were little. I know I just naturally taught in a different way, and I pulled back on the ABA. So the kind of cubicle, working in a cubicle one-on-one with someone, I didn't do anymore. I wanted them to be part of the community with the other speaking students.
Right. So not all my viewers are familiar with all of this. They just are curious about autism, and then they just watch that. So I always like people to explain the acronyms. ABA means applied behavior analysis, but just so they have a better understanding, I'll just tell you from my point of view, that's what they used with my son, Robbie. When he was little, I have videos on my YouTube channel of him sitting in that cubicle that you're talking about, right? And they put the sides up so there's no distractions.
Yep.
And they say, Robbie, do this. And they wait for him to clap. And as soon as he claps, they immediately reward him. They'll give him an M&M or a goldfish or something. And then they'll stomp the feet. Robbie, do this. And then they wait for him to do it. And then he gets the reward. And he was little. And I'll never forget, I went to, I think it was SeaWorld or something. And you're watching the dolphins do a flip and they toss him a fish. And I said, oh my God, this is what they do with my son. They're training him like an animal, But then I had to immediately dismiss that thought. I'm like, well, no, they know what they're doing, The good side of ABA, though, was that one summer I watched my friend's little boy for the summer. She went to work, and I took Robbie, my son, and her son both to McDonald's that day, and Robbie knew how to sit quietly in the restaurant and sit and eat, and the other kid was running circles around the restaurant. And that's when I said, he needs to go to Robbie's school. He needs to learn behavior modification, So they need to learn what's appropriate behavior and what's not. And when they get older, certain things become problems where they, just take their pants off in public or whatever.
Right.
I mean, there's a place for it, right? But the part that I'm talking about with just like training animals, that's where it becomes, that's where the controversy is, I think. And people can Google where ABA came from and how it started. But tell me a little bit, like when you go to school to do ABA, like how are they justifying that? How are they teaching you? Like what I'm saying is, doesn't anybody question that? Like, wait, you want me to give him like, do this? Here's an M&M. Like nobody put two and two together. That's like how you train your dog.
I didn't until I got a puppy.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I remember clearly, I was walking her on the leash, trying to get her to heel. And I was saying, good heel. And I was giving a treat. And I thought, this is what I'm doing with the kids.
Good job. Good job. Yeah.
And I was horrified that I was doing that. Like, it just really, it was a mind shift for me. Like,
well, I'll tell you, another aspect of it for me, though, was I saw it as positive reinforcement. We really learned how to always say, good job, Robbie. Good job. I'm so proud of you. Great job. High five, whatever. Oh, there's your dog. The dog heard you.
Different dog, but yes.
Whereas when I was growing up, it was just punishment only. You did something wrong, you got hit. There was no positive reinforcement at all. That's the way I saw it, as like, oh, wow, this is such a better way of learning, the positive reinforcement rather than, punishment.
Yes. And there's a place like there were maybe 6 kids in that first group, and we had a summer of potty training.
Yes.
and using ABA. Like everyone was potty trained.
Yes.
And
But I trained all my
that was great.
I potty trained all my kids that way with the little, piece of candy or some kind of a reward, not just Robbie. So yeah.
So there were these things, and there were like you said, like sitting, quietly, or taking off your backpack and hanging it, those little things. It became when they became older, it just didn't feel right to me, if that makes sense. Like in my
Mhm.
gut, I've been teaching for a long time. And it's the only thing I've ever done. So,
Right.
I know when something doesn't feel right, and that good job in that high voice
Mhm.
now becomes an annoyance
Yeah.
to a 12-year-old.
Sure.
They're 12 and you're
Mhm.
clapping for them, like, nice job spelling your name. It wasn't sitting right with me. So I started pulling away from it naturally at
Yeah,
that
because you're sort of
point.
treating them like a baby then. So did you
Yes.
have non-speaking kids?
Yes, I did. So that first group was all
Okay.
non-speaking speakers. Do you want me to talk about the spelling
Yeah.
part of how that happened? Or
Yes. Well, what I want to know first though is, were you teaching them age appropriate material?
no, nope, I was not. And I
Right,
have
because
apologized to them profusely.
because you didn't think they were capable, right? Because they couldn't speak and they don't really respond, and so you just think they just don't understand.
It like hurts my soul to admit that. Like
Yeah, but you didn't
it
know.
really, I know, but I know. And I
Yeah.
tell parents, like, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
When parents are beating themselves up about it. But I'm so grateful that those little ones, who are some of them, the oldest one's 25 now, and I'm working with him now, and I've been able to apologize
Sure.
for not providing him with this age appropriate content.
Right.
And I've learned what they know. Everyone, every one of them,
Wow.
what they really know. So yeah, no, I wasn't doing that. It's very
So
sad.
so now you've learned all these things because you've learned about spelling. So how did you find out about spelling to communicate?
So one of my students from way back was now in I think ninth grade at the time. It was right around 2020. So it was probably, we were back in school. So Connecticut went back, or our town went back to school like in August of 2020. During when everything was shut down, one of my families had discovered Underestimated and gave it to
Oh,
me to read.
the book. Yeah.
Yes. And they had started their journey, and there was no one around here that did spelling, so they were going to, I think, New York. So what I saw the first time after I read Underestimated, I was like, wow, I need to learn this. What do I do? And then the first time I witnessed it, I saw my student, who was, maybe 15 at the time, and he said, hi. He spelt out, "Hi, Miss Wierbecki. I'm so glad I'm finally able to talk to you. Thank you for being so patient with me." And I just started bawling.
I'm like,
I
I know,
mean,
I'm like
I mean,
crying just thinking of it. Ah,
it makes me, I'll never not feel emotional about that moment. And I was blown away.
where
And
was he when you saw this? Did he come to school and spell with you? Like, who was his practitioner?
his dad was he's not a practitioner, but he was holding
His
the board at
partner.
the time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I'm still learning all the lingo. Okay, so his dad was holding the board for him so that he could communicate with you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And there were some other things going on. So we were actually, he was in his car,
Oh,
and I had gone out to the parking lot, and I was sitting in the back of his car watching him spell.
oh,
And then I started recording. Because he just had so much to say that first time.
sure.
And I was blown away. And then I still spell with him, and he's my teacher. Like I tell him that all the time. He's my teacher, and for so many things. And I go to his home every day to work with him.
Wow. Okay, so now hold on. So he's 15, so he's still in school and you're his teacher,
Mhm.
right? And you learned that he can spell to communicate, but was he spelling in school? Was he allowed to spell in
He
school?
Well, he wasn't, he was having some medical issues, so he was on homebound tutoring. So
Oh,
they came to the school to show me. In the beginning, I was leaving school at 12 every day. So the school was, paying me to go to the house for an hour a day, work with him,
right,
and then I went back to work,
right.
went back to school. So they continued. So I was his only teacher.
Got it.
And actually, that was in 2020. That started in 2020. I still work with him every day. I mean, it's just continued, and the school pays me. Before I started spelling with him, I was not trained, so I didn't do that. I presented him with age appropriate content. That's what I started to do. And then he would spell with his dad and where he was going to see his practitioner. And then he shut down for a bit and he wouldn't spell with anyone. I was not comfortable starting spelling until I started my class at IAS, an International Association for Spelling to Communicate.
Right.
So because I didn't know anything. All I knew
Right.
was what I read in the book, and then I had a parent and his child spelling, but I didn't know enough. And so I didn't want to mess anything up. So all I knew was like presuming competence, and this is what I'm going to do. And I did that throughout. Once I learned that, every student I was presuming competence with at that point.
Right.
And
Yeah, all of a
I
sudden
went
now you
through-
see all of your other students in a completely different light, right?
Totally. And I was really worried that, like, have I talked down to you ever? I felt so guilty. But there were some things instinctually I would always say, like, my students can read the room better than anyone else. They know who's authentic and who's not. And behaviors will come up when people are saying, like, oh, good job. Oh, you did great. Well, that kid's 17. Are you going to go talk to another 17-year-old like that? So as I was learning, I had to they require you to make videos and work with a variety of different students with different disabilities. So I was able to do this with people who had autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. So I had a great opportunity during my classwork to work with all these different people. And I saw what they could do, and I would call them. So my director of special ed knew what I was doing. She knew I was doing spelling. I was doing this in the school. With everyone else. They were okay with it. They came up and watched. The school behaviorists came in and watched. Speech came in and watched. OT was really into it. PT was really into it. So I had a lot of support.
The speech therapist was okay with it?
Yep. She wasn't doing it, but she was okay with it. Like,
right.
Because I've heard other speech therapists are just like, no, I don't even want to see it. I won't even watch a video.
Right. That's why I'm surprised that they were okay. Yeah.
I think, it's a small town. I'd been there for so long. So we had all worked together for a very long time. So there's that level of trust, I had a great experience, and I was able to take my April break and go to Growing Kids Therapy Center and do my internship there. So I was really in the thick of it. That was like, they just threw me in, they throw you in and you're working with everyone. And I was scared. I was a little intimidated because they're so great at what they do. And I was coming in, I hadn't finished my work yet. I was still in classes. So that was a great experience though, because the spellers, they were so nice. They were like, don't worry about it. Cause I felt bad. You have to go back to using 3 boards when there's a new partner, and some of them were on keyboards, and I felt like I was like pulling them down with me, and they reassured me, no, we're used to it. You have to learn. And so it was a great experience. I stayed in school as a teacher for 1 more full year after that. And then I became so busy doing spelling after school that I retired. I had enough years in, I was able to retire.
So what the spellers that you had after school, were these your students during the day, or these are other kids?
Those were other kids, because I was spelling with my students during school. So I started in July because that's when I became certified in it. So I didn't charge anyone to do anything until all that was complete. And then that full school year, I was spelling with other kids who I had been doing ABA therapy with. They stopped ABA and they were coming to me for spelling. That's who I was
Wait, they were
working
coming
with
to you for spelling when? After school, you mean?
after school. So not my students. I would work it with other districts
Oh,
doing ABA. It
oh,
was
right,
actually
because you were
working for,
doing ABA after school.
yes,
You were still
yes,
doing this. You were still doing the ABA
yes,
after school. Okay, with other students. Got it.
yes,
And so, and they were non-speakers as well?
yes.
Okay. So then they stopped doing ABA and started doing spelling. Did you introduce them to spelling? How did they find out about it?
I did. So as I was learning, I was talking to parents and saying,
Hmm.
"This is so cool! Like this is such a cool thing," and they wanted to try. Everyone wanted to try it,
Hmm.
and you could. I mean, you sit through one session and your mind is blown. So I started even with a 4-year-old. I was working with a 4-year-old, and they wanted to start it, and he's 6 now,
Right.
and the stuff he spells is wild. It's wild. So they all, wanted to do it. So
Hmm.
they saw the benefit in it and started learning about it and have come on this journey with me.
How many kids do you see?
Now,
Yeah.
I have 15 on my caseload,
Hmm.
and some I see 5 times a week.
Oh,
Some 3.
wow.
I mean, I'm working 7 days a week because I was having trouble keeping up with the demand because
Sure.
there wasn't anyone in the area, and
Right.
some people were traveling 3 hours one way.
Wow.
And so you really want to, so if someone's traveling 3 hours, I'm not just going to do a 50-minute session. I'm going to stay
Right.
there until
Sure.
everyone feels good. So maybe we could do a Zoom session after that.
Right.
But I feel like my job is to inform people about this,
Sure.
and spread the word. And I don't want to turn
Right.
anyone away.
So, since you're already a teacher, it's not just teaching them to spell, it's also giving them age appropriate lessons
Mm,
as well. So you've got both of those in your back pocket there, so you can come up with lessons for them as well as
yes.
teaching them how to spell. Like that's a double whammy.
I haven't found anyone who struggles with the act of spelling. Like they're all great spellers, and they just soak up the content. Especially, so the guys that I have been spelling with for longer and who are fluent, they have told me, what they want to learn.
Oh, okay.
Right now, I have students who are extremely interested in the election, and they want to talk about that all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Huh. What else do they like?
So I have not met someone who isn't extraordinarily brilliant in math. And because I've known many of them for so long,
Yeah.
like I know I didn't teach you this,
Right. How do
how
you
you
know? Yeah,
learning it.
that's funny. Yeah. I
So
mean, and honestly, special ed, they're not teaching you any kind of advanced mathematics that you're going to be teaching
no,
your kids. So like they're probably beyond, I would assume they're beyond your level mathematically.
oh my gosh. Yes. Yes, they are. And a lot of science and mythology seems to be a theme with boys and girls, that they love mythology and conspiracy theories.
Oh, interesting.
That's what I found to be, yeah, really kind of universal.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. I like that too. I find it fascinating. When things happen, I'm like, let me see what the conspiracy people think.
Yes, me too.
What do they
Me
have to
too.
say? And some of it is really interesting, some of it is a little too out there. But yeah, it's fun. So once they began to speak, like these teenagers that grew up doing ABA, what did they have to say about
Mm.
their past? I mean, because I know you felt that you like you said, you felt bad. Did I treat you like a baby and stuff? But what did they say to you about their past growing up in school?
To me, yeah, they were all saying like, "Oh no, you never did that." They're very very kind.
Mhm.
No, you didn't. They start naming names, but basically they've said, it's like being treated, not even like, I don't even want to say like a dog, like something less,
Mm.
being talked down to. And what I've been told is that they kind of go and they're learning all the time.
Mm.
They're picking up on things and listening to maybe another classroom, um, And they're getting a lot of information that way. So
Oh,
one of them said to me, like, when it looked like I was humming or not listening, I was listening to Mr. So-and-so teach science class next door. So that was really interesting.
and could you hear him in the other classroom? Could you clearly hear him? Yeah, the science
Personally,
teacher in the other room?
I couldn't. If everything was quiet, maybe, I would be teaching and have
Right.
other students. So I wasn't really paying attention. But if things were quiet, I could hear everything. But what they've told me is that I can zone out what's happening here in front of me and
Mhm.
focus on what's happening over there
Right.
and really learn something.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. We can cut this out if you're uncomfortable. Have you noticed any kind of telepathy going on with them?
1,000,000%.
Ha!
I know no one wants to talk about it.
Oh, I do. Oh, I find it fascinating. And I've already interviewed a couple of moms that have already said it. And I've read the books. And the kids are saying all non-speakers can do it. All of them. They can hear the thoughts. Because I think that's how they really are hearing what's going on in the other classroom. That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
So I have a student who doesn't have, just grabbing my transcripts to see what we talked about yesterday, who they don't
Okay.
have internet or a TV.
Okay.
And this kid will say to me, I can't believe what happened with P. Diddy. Can you believe? And I'll say, what happened? Like, I'm not
Mhm.
aware. And telling me everything and so those kind of things, when I say to the families, like, yeah, they're like, how does he know that? I don't know. I don't know.
Right. If there's no TV and no internet, how do they know? Unless you talked about it, talk to him about it, right? The only reason I know
yeah,
is because of social media.
there have been so many things, like, for instance, this dog I just adopted about a month ago, and it was last minute. I didn't tell anyone about it. And I took she paddle boards with me. I'm a big paddle boarder, and we fell off. So one morning this summer, and a client came in and said, when are you going to tell me about your dog? Got the name right. Why aren't you wearing a life jacket when you're paddle boarding? Which I'm not. She is, my dog is, but I'm not.
Uh-huh.
And told me basically the story of what happened. That's just one little example.
Yeah.
Like, there have been so many things with my family. I'm not talking about that with people.
Mhm.
And
That's the
wild.
stuff that's mind blowing. Yeah. And then you really start thinking, what have I said or thought in front of them over the years?
Oh, I don't
You
even
start.
have to be there. I don't have to be there because with the paddleboarding situation, when we fell, I had gone paddleboarding that morning, which I never do before I did anything early, like 6 in the morning. And by the time I had this client, I mean, it wasn't in my head. I wasn't thinking about it. I forgot about it.
Right.
And so when he said all that, I said, how do you know? I wasn't even thinking about it or anything. And he said, oh, I dip in on you occasionally.
Great. Great.
I said, so did you dip in this morning? He said, yeah, I dipped in to see what you were doing. Okay.
Wow. He dips in like to your mind?
That's what he said. Yeah. That's his phrase. I dip in.
Okay.
I dip in to your mind. So, I mean, he has, my father has Parkinson's, and it's gotten worse, affecting his speech.
Mhm.
And I've got these students who are saying to me, like, telling me what my dad's feeling. They've never met my dad.
Wow.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
Wild. And I keep track of everything they say to me.
Yes.
I
With the-
video record every session,
Yeah.
and I keep a transcript.
Yeah.
And so frequently my transcripts have, I'll show you, like, I don't know how well you can see, but writing all down it,
Yes.
because these are our side conversations.
Oh.
And I have pages and pages of side conversations. So we'll be doing a lesson, and
Mhm.
someone will say, I want to talk about the election, or I want to talk about Trump. I want to, just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then it's like, we're off to the races.
Yeah.
What's going to come now? I love that. I'm having these conversations with these guys.
Yes. And do their parents know? I'm assuming they
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because so I upload their videos into a Google Drive for them, for
Okay.
parents, if
Okay.
they're not there. But most of the time the parents are right there, and I type up a transcript. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that's been spelled and said, I put my reactions or what I have said, I just put that in quotes. So the parents all know, like what their kids spelled is bolded, all caps, and what I put is just in quotes, regular font.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I don't know if I told you ahead of time before our interview, but my son, he passed away 7 years ago.
Oh no.
And he was a complete non-speaker. And so I'm learning all of this stuff now about all of the presuming competence and the telepathic and all these kind of things. And it's like blowing my mind thinking, oh my God, what did I say? What did I think? What did what did he know? And I have no way of knowing, I can't go back now. It's not like I can have him spell now and say, oh, what did, I can't ask, but I find it fascinating. Hearing about it. So there's a podcast that just came out. It's called the Telepathy Tapes, and it's by a producer in Hollywood that I think has filmed. But she's doing the podcast, just the audio right now. And she so far has interviewed 3 people that I've already had on my podcast. So she's interviewed Manisha Ladd, who she's one of the first people that I heard about RPM and spelling from. We talked about that on the podcast, but she said nothing about the telepathic, because that's usually that's not something they just come out and tell anybody. So I was really surprised to hear her on this podcast talking about that. And Katie in Houston, and then Tawny and Josiah are going to be on, and they all say the same thing. I talk to Katie and Tawny all the time, and they're like, "I'm telling you, it's all of them. It's all of them." So they're trying to do
That's
like a whole film
found.
about it. So now here you are, a teacher that is also, now you've got the transcripts. You're like, oh yeah, it's all of them.
There's just no way. I mean, there's things I haven't, like the last week, my sister called me at night to tell me her grandson was in the hospital. And the next morning, one of my spellers told me,
Yeah.
your grandnephew's in the hospital, he's got a fever of 105, like the whole thing. How
did you know that?
I don't even say how. Yeah. I mean, now it's, now he, I've dipped in, or I try not to ask leading questions like that, but it's a little challenging because you really want to know.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it really seems to be they're communicating.
What I want to know is, when you're working with them and you know that they can hear your thoughts, how are you shutting down your thoughts?
So I have to focus on what they're saying, especially with when they're so open. So I have to constantly just be focused on their letters and what they're saying, because otherwise I would lose it. I would lose their train of thought.
Yeah.
So what else is interesting, the people I've been spelling with longer will take breaks because they know I need to write it down. Because I can hold a couple sentences.
Right.
But that's it. Like, I can't hold more than that in my head. So they will have a natural stop. They'll just stop, and I'm writing it down really quickly.
Yeah.
But now I know they're waiting for me. Like, they're
Yeah.
stopping to let me write it down.
Huh.
It's wild.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Mm.
It really is. I've learned from Houston, who's the speller, that they all communicate with each other as well this way. And Robbie's teacher used to say that Robbie would always laugh when somebody else was like getting in trouble, in class. He'd like kind of giggle, to sort of like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen type of it, And then I start wondering, what are these kids in the classroom talking to each other about? And it's almost like they set it up on purpose just to, just to try to teach it crazy, just so that they can all laugh about it and think it's funny. But they call it, if they can talk to somebody in another state or whatever, telepathically, and they call it the hill. They meet each other at the hill. Have you ever heard that term before?
No.
Ask them. If they've ever been to the hill.
Because I know that my the students that have known each other, even their various ages, they range from like 19 to 25, who
Mhm.
don't see each other anymore, but
Yes.
they're all talking to each other.
Yes.
And I know that because they'll tell me, they'll say, so and so is doing this now. I'm not happy about that. You should do something. You should tell their mother or father. You like
Right.
they're telling me about each other.
Wow.
So within themselves, their
Yeah.
group, I know they're communicating.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. So now another out there question. Have any of them ever told you that they can see, like in the spirit realm, like that they see angels or demons and any of that kind of stuff?
I just had this conversation with a parent yesterday.
Uh-huh.
So yes, um, they have different people have said things like, your friend Kathy's here with you, a friend of mine who died when she was 12.
Ah,
That there's no way, like they don't
yeah.
know. I've never, I'm not talking to them about this. And I just had a very long conversation. So there's a lot of bluntness too.
Yeah. Well, they're
So
autistic, right?
right. So with my father being sick and he had a couple strokes, one of them said, like, your dad's going to die soon.
Oh,
This is what you need to do to help him.
yeah.
And he's waiting for your mother to tell him it's okay. Like these
Oh,
are like deep things. And
yeah.
so
But to them, yeah, but to them, they're so tapped in. It's like there's a portal here and heaven's here and they're here and it's right here. It's right
it's
and
right here.
it's right here. So it's not a scary thing to them. It's like, well, this is just an everyday thing. Like, so if they say, well, your dad's gonna die soon, that just means like, oh, he's gonna walk next door tomorrow. It's like,
Yes.
it's
This
like
is the
just a matter of
conversation
fact.
we had yesterday. It was
Mhm.
about how no one really leaves. They're all
Right.
like right here. So, and these are conversations I don't initiate at all. It's
Mhm.
all
But that's who
just,
they are.
they're just, yep, coming at me with it and telling me like, yeah, your dad's frustrated. He's all like, yeah, of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? And telling me things even about this dog I got. So one of the students said to me, Dodge and Star, the two dogs I had before her who died, brought her to you.
Oh,
I believe that. Like,
yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah.
That
What about the
they,
dog? Do they pick up on anything that the dog thinks, or like I don't know if animals think in
I don't
words or not.
know. They did tell me my dogs are like here. And someone said to me this week, everyone that you've ever loved and has died, they're here. They're waiting for you, like to
Mhm.
see them.
Mm.
They're just waiting for you to see them. You'll see them again.
Hmm.
So there's this deep comfort I get in
Right.
that, yeah, everyone's around, but it's a lot of talk about frequencies and different
Yes.
frequencies. And what I used to say before spelling, I would pick up, they're really good at picking up energy,
Yes.
which is the same thing. Like that was naturally what I felt. If someone had a bad energy, they would know.
Yes.
Someone wasn't
Yes.
good, they would know.
Yes. I always said
And
Robbie had a sixth sense that he would just pick up on
yes,
people. That was before I knew any of this stuff. I just knew that he had this discernment or whatever, that he just could pick up. I didn't. And we used to joke that sometimes he'd sit in his room and he'd just start laughing like he saw something in his room. And we would just say, oh, he's playing with his angels, like half as a joke. But
right.
there was a part of me that thought, oh, yeah, but I wonder if he really can. Now I'm
Well,
convinced
so yes,
definitely saw
yes.
something.
But I could see when one of them first started to say things like, said to their parents, like, oh, aunt so and so and so and so went to the church and did this. And it were things and talking about a grandma who had died and saying things that there would be no way he would know. It was just the family started asking him all these questions and he shut down. And
Oh,
I think it was too much because he was like in the beginning of his journey in spelling. He had just become open, and there was so much maybe pressure. I don't know if that's the right word, but of him, like which I think is natural. You would say like,
mhm.
oh, how's this person? How's this? But can you see this one? What are they saying?
Yeah.
And I think it became too much.
Yeah.
So I hadn't been working with him yet at that point, but the parents told me about it. So it just seemed to be like that was a little bit of overload
Yeah.
for
See, when you say he shut down, you mean he stopped spelling?
he stopped spelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does he spell now for you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's back.
Mhm.
But I think there's that fine line almost because it's compelling. It's so compelling.
Mhm.
And they've been silenced for so long and now have a voice. And it's like, okay, you can talk about whatever.
Mhm.
Because I have a client whose mom's a therapist who's like, is this too intrusive? Because they're going in, they're going in. But I've always been open with my students, and I would talk about things in class. And I said, it's a lot of times I feel like that it's just like if you're in a typical classroom, the teacher's talking, someone raises their hand, it's like, oh, what did you do this weekend, to get you off topic,
Mhm.
so that you will just you'll start talking. Kids do that all the time.
Mhm.
And part of me is like, is that happening to me right now? Like, is this boring? Are you bored by this? But we always finish our lessons. Like, we always get all the like work part
Mhm.
done. In the middle, we might go off and have a conversation, but it's just like someone interrupting you to tell you something. And
Right.
so I go with it. That's what I do. I just go with it because I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and you just see how fascinating they really are, right? And how much we really did underestimate them.
Oh, so much.
Mhm.
And that's hard. That's hard to really think about because all those years, it's like, oh, that was wasted time that
Yeah.
just been filling them up, or just having them, knowing that their bodies don't always listen to them, or they might be saying no loudly, but they want to do that. That's
Mhm.
happened to me a lot where someone's verbally no, but they're spelling, don't listen to what's coming out of my mouth. That's mouth noise.
Yeah, that I
Okay.
was gonna say that the apraxia, learning about apraxia probably was huge as well,
Huge,
right?
huge.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
you're judging them by their behaviors and what's coming out of their mouth and everything all these years, and come to find out that all that's unreliable.
Yes, when I heard that, it's like, oh wow.
Right.
Because we're so focused on them speaking words out of their mouth
Yes.
that you didn't get to the meat of anything. And I've seen this, like, oh, my son can type, or yeah, they can go to YouTube and type, whatever they've been typing forever.
Mhm.
That is, just kind of motor memory or whatever, but you're not getting to the meat of who they are. Like, once you get in there, that's what's so important. And that's what I don't think enough people realize. Like, we want to get to the point where someone's debating about the election
Right. Right.
and what
Right.
they
And I'm
think.
glad you brought that up because a lot of people think, oh, well, my kid can use a Proloquo, or whatever, or
Right.
they can type on a computer, but this is still different. Once they start using
Yes.
this other side of the brain with the gross motor, it's like the real person comes out.
Yes. Yes. And they have their own vocabulary, their own slang, their own, way to their cadence of talking is
Mm,
uh, in letters. Like, that's, you just learn it. Like, you learn the way someone talks and the shorthand they might speak
right.
is happening with spelling, which is so cool to see.
Mhm.
And to see that, I have the great advantage of knowing some of these people for 20 years, and to see things we thought of as behaviors, and like everything just kind of settles. I mean, it doesn't settle forever. It doesn't, there's still things that happen, but it's just like, oh, I could breathe. Like, you're listening now,
Right.
and you're going to tell people about this.
Right.
And my spellers have said to me, like, you need to be telling everyone, like, get out there and do more.
That's
Okay.
why you're here today.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
back and tell
Get out
them
there.
that you're on the podcast.
Oh,
Tell your
I
spellers to watch
will.
the
They probably
podcast.
know. I'm sure they know.
Mhm. Yeah, tell them to watch because they'll be interested to hear the other stories of the other spellers, and they might even know them. They probably say, "Oh yeah, no, Houston, I met him on the hill."
Yeah, probably. Nothing surprises me anymore because it's just so pure and so this population is just so wonderful,
Yeah, and this is
and they
what I've
truly
heard
have been
too.
underestimated.
Yes, and I've heard that too. It's that once once they are communicating and the parents or whoever starts apologizing for I never knew and all, they're just so merciful and forgiving and so sweet. They're just so sweet. They don't come at you with any anger. That's like, it's okay. You didn't know.
No, you didn't know. You didn't
Mhm.
know. So that's something that really sticks with me too, that because I did apologize to everyone, and
Mhm.
they all were like, no, don't worry. Just such amazing people.
Mhm.
And, it's just like, I want the world to know how amazing you all are. You're just amazing.
Yeah.
And so smart
Mhm.
about so many things. It's just, I learned so much. There's things I didn't know anything about. And I feel like they've taught me through like saying, oh, I want to learn about this topic now. Can you write a lesson on wormholes? Can you write a lesson on dark matter? Can you? Okay, so they're always teaching me as
Sure.
well. So it's just been
Sure.
great.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome.
as I was able to retire because I put in, started teaching so early, to have this as like my second career is amazing. I could do it I'd like more people to be doing this.
I
So
think I think everything led up to now, where you are now, you know?
yes,
I
yes,
think having all those years of teaching and everything gives you a different perspective now, and now you realize what a miracle all of this really is and how amazing it is. And you get to be right in the middle of it and part of it, which is
I know, I love
awesome.
it.
Which is
I
awesome.
love it, and I love that I'm with these families that I've known for so long.
Mhm.
And when you've known someone for since they were 3, like
Mhm.
I can kid with them, be like, I potty trained you.
Yes.
I'm like, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. But that's how long
But
I've
it's
known them,
true.
a long
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
It's
So it's been wonderful.
yeah. Yeah. One last question. So Asha they've put out that it's you can't rely on spelling to communicate and all that kind of stuff, and they want the science to back it up. What do you say about that? I mean, you've got all the notes. You've got all the notes. They
I
think that the
feel
practitioners are doing all of the spelling for them.
mm, so to me, it's like watch one session with anyone because there's no way I know how I'm holding my board in one hand and they're poking the letters, not
Right.
me. There's no movement with the other hand. Like
Mhm.
nothing happens with this hand. So
And they're telling you things that you don't even know. So
a 1,000,000%. I couldn't answer these
how could you
questions.
be doing it for them? How could you be
I
moving
couldn't.
their hand for them and giving the answers to these questions when they're talking about things you don't even know? Right?
I couldn't. Especially that's so clear with math.
Mhm.
When you get into like I would be picking up a board and trying to look to see what the answer is like over here and they're answering like
Yeah.
I can't, and it's in front of me and
Yeah.
they had to put it all together and do a math and the answer is
Mhm.
like that. So I don't understand. To me, you use every tool you have in your tool belt and pick the ones that work the best. It's not
Mhm.
about us, it's not about
Mhm.
our ego,
Right.
it's about them. Like, would you take my glasses away from me and say, go drive? Well, I would be crashing into everyone.
Mhm.
Would you say an interpreter couldn't come in for a deaf student? No, we have them. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like something like Proloquo or a iPad, it's programmed. So it's not what they're programming, it's programmed already. Someone's programming it.
Right.
So it's not their unique thoughts.
Right.
I just don't understand. I don't understand why anyone is putting up a roadblock for it because all you have to do is watch it.
Mhm.
Watch one session with someone and you'll see no one's doing anything. You're not
Mhm.
moving the board around.
Mhm.
You're not doing
Right.
anything. You're just
Right.
sitting there holding a board.
Right.
And especially when they're fluent, you're prompting when they're, starting.
Right. Right. But then they become independent after a while. Yeah.
Yes.
So you retired from the school, so I don't know if you know, but if anybody who's teaching now and are they using spelling? Like what are they doing since you've
They're
left?
not.
No.
They're not.
Mm-mm.
No, it's very sad because I had para-educators who I trained and
Yeah, the paras are still
really
there. Yeah.
the paras have left now because the person who took my spot wouldn't it went back, like they really went backwards. And there were,
Sure.
so last year was my first full year of not teaching, and I mean it was a disaster because no one presumed competence with
Right.
anyone. So they had gone for like about 2 years of someone presuming everyone, because everyone around me had to do it. And then they went back to spell
Yeah, the
your
old
name to a
ways.
17, 18-year-old, like
Yeah.
point to M. No. So they saw a lot of behaviors.
Right. And there you go. The behaviors start. Sure. Because they're
Yep.
frustrated.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course. So like safe rooms were ripped apart, classrooms had to be left. So it's it's sad. There's where I don't know what to do. Like I've given information to people. Let's say I went to their homes, everyone's home, to like put myself there.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not doing it. And the special ed director who was there when I was there is no longer there.
Oh, yeah. Because I was
So
going to say you could go to the director and say, hey, listen, would you tell your teacher to, learn this? But she's gone too. So
and it's a new teacher, like first year teaching. I thought I met with her and thought like, I'm going to give you all this information. This is great stuff. And she, like most people do, they like, oh, that's great. That's great. And nothing.
and then no.
They go back to what they know. They actually put up cubicles in my old classroom, which I had never had. And then the paras quit. The paras that were working there left, ended up leaving because they couldn't do it anymore. So
right. Yeah. That's sad for the kids, but what are you going to do?
it is. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's the next thing is it's got to get accepted in schools and the teachers, it's got to become part of the program of somebody that goes to school for special ed. They should be learning this as part of their curriculum, honestly.
They should, absolutely. Two of my students had cerebral palsy and had a lot of motor, a lot of like arm hand control. And it was a challenge to find like what's going to work best with this. But once we did it, once we figured out what board to use and how to do all that, it was so great because all of a sudden he had this huge smile on his face. And if I would take kids one at a time and say like, okay, I'm taking this one right now, someone would start crying because I wasn't taking them. And I would say, you're next. Like, I'll come back and we'll do a lesson. Let's go do a lesson or let's go spell. And they happily would go into another room with me and do this for an hour. I was contacted by another district and they hired me last year to work in the school with a student doing spelling. And I thought, this is great. They're bringing it into, they don't know me. They just kind of found me. They met me. We had an interview. I explained spelling. It's about an hour and a half away from me. And this young lady was coming to me 4 times a week. So the parents wanted to put it in the school. The district approved it. But what they did, so how I envisioned it was that she would be going to classes and then get the information. We'd maybe go into another room and do the work. If she would answer the questions, things like that. So she wanted really to be with her peers. And what they did was they just put us in a room all day by ourselves and put online class. That wasn't so we really were tucked away. I mean, it's a step because we were in the school doing it.
Right.
But it wasn't the step how I saw it happening. I really had hoped to get her into a classroom with her peers. But it just didn't happen that way. So it's a battle that we just have to keep fighting.
At least the school recognized the spelling though, because I know of people that schools just flat out refuse. And the kids are just, they're communicating at home, but they're not allowed to at school and they're just being restrained all day. It's just
like a civil rights violation. I feel like, you're taking away their right to communicate.
Yep.
So I encourage parents to say that, like, the civil rights violation as far as I'm concerned. I'm working with a family right now with a district who is just shutting it down. So just giving them the words to say, and I go to their PPTs with them now because I don't want to bash schools, but I just don't like what I see in this capacity because you should be using every tool you have, like I said before.
Right. To me, it just doesn't make sense. It's like your job as a teacher is to teach kids in any way that gets through to them so that they can learn. So so if this works, what's the problem?
And schools are always looking at the money, the cost. This is probably the least expensive thing. Like once people got trained, you're cool. Like
it's like having blind kids and saying, oh no, you're not allowed to use Braille.
Yes, that's another example I give.
Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So
and it's like no skin off of your nose, like to trains, they could be training people, they could be training paraeducators. There's so many things that could be done. And it's frustrating, but we just have to keep fighting the fight.
Right. Okay, Kelly, I've had you on here for a long time, and we hit some stuff that I didn't even know we were going to get on to, but it's good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, my next interview is going to be, it's going to be very interesting as well. Talking about the telepathy and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be great. So you're not the only one. There's quite a few. There's quite a few.
Oh, is that? Yeah, it's undeniable once you start seeing it.
Right? It's crazy. So, all right. Well, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Bye-bye. That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. To learn more about our children's book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, or to learn more about what we do at Robbie's World Foundation, simply visit our website at robbiesworldbook.com.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.